is there a correlation to how fasting helps our brain?
So I put the health claimer in there in terms of just I'm not a medical doctor.
That's right.
But I have done a lot of personal research on this. We've had a lot of fasting experts on, including Dr. Mindy on our podcast, who are experts at it. For me personally, I do intermittent fasting 5 days a week, and it's not because my willpower is so great. It's just I don't really crave breakfast. And even as a child, it wasn't something that I would lean into. The idea behind fasting is, first of all, digestion takes up an immense amount of energy. Right. The process of breaking down food into nutrients takes up a lot of energy. And sometimes people know that when they eat a food that doesn't agree with them, or it's just, and they're in a food coma, they don't have a lot of energy because it takes so much time and energy to break that down. The idea with fasting, is that you have energy sources, right? A lot of times people are, triggered, you fueling their brain with sugar. Or you could, through fasting, you could train it to feed off of fat or ketones, right? We hear a lot about ketosis, where some people say when you do this intermittent fasting and fasting for a couple of days, it could also produce stem cells. And there's a healing factor that's also triggered also as well. I really feel like everybody should be CEO of their own health, right? That I want to remind everyone, you are the pilot of your body, which includes your brain, not the passenger. And then going back to agency and responsibility, I feel like it's so important for us to be responsible. I also know that there's so many tests out there nowadays, and it's hard to be able to manage something if you don't measure it. So even as you're going through it, there's ways of measuring everything, whether it's the breathing I was mentioning before, or your deep sleep, or your REM sleep, or your heart rate variability, or your heart rate, in general. There are different things that you can measure along the way. But I would say that for me personally, I like intermittent fasting. Every season I'll fast for a couple of days just on water to clean out my system. But I'm not an expert on fasting, but a lot of my clients get huge lifts in their focus and their brain energy, and their mental clarity, having a fasting process. It's not for everybody. And I would also remember that women, it's also, while men have a 24-hour cycle like women do, they also have a 28-day cycle. So every single week changes and their hormonal profile changes. Dr. Mindy, I would recommend, is an expert at that. She wrote a book called Fasting Like a Girl, which documents all the research in that area. But I like looking, because there's meds. I talk about meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. But then I mentioned the RX. The R is relationships. The people we spend time with. It's not just our neurological networks, it's our social networks, right? Who we spend time with is who we become. And I always tell people, watch, because we have these, we imitate people around us, and the science is we have mirror neurons, which creates empathy. When you watch a movie, you feel what the character is going through because that's your mirror neurons lighting up. Watch is an acronym. We mirror or imitate W words. We use the same language as the people we spend most time with, which affects how we think, right? The A in watch is actions. We behave like the people we spend the most time with also as well. If our friends exercise, we're more likely to exercise. The T is thoughts. We tend to think the same way as the people around us. The C is character. We tend to have the same moral compass or integrity. I read recently, integrity is measured by the distance between someone's lips and their life. I thought it was really poetic.
Yeah.
So we tend to have the same character or moral integrity as somebody we spend time with. And then the H are habits. And as to remind everybody, there's no such thing as good or bad memory, but there are good memory habits and poor memory habits. And first you create your habits, and then your habits create you. Like whether you meditate or exercise or smoke is less to do with your biology and more do your friends smoke or exercise or do yoga or fast or have a good diet. And so the people we spend time with is important. So that's R, and meds RX. And the X are all the extras. I would do all the other ones first, but that can include fasting. That can include cold therapy. You take your cold showers or cold plunges or your red light saunas and all that, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, all that extra, brain hacking, if you will. But I would always put the other ones first because that'll be the biggest needle mover for most of us.